Hello, everybody, and welcome to this session about increasing digital environments and their impact on the workforce. My name is Mathiesen, and I am quite fond of this topic of well-being alongside digital. I was not lucky enough to be in the first year of Professional Care Workers Day, as it was called back then, but I remember a remarkable talk by Amanda Waring in the second year of Professional Care Workers Day, and now we're lucky enough to have a whole Professional Care Workers Week. Amanda back then was talking about the essence and the key to outstanding care work and thinking about every individual receiving and giving care. This session today is then going to focus on digital and if digital can be such an enabler. We would like the session to help bust some myths about the digitally reluctant workforce, and of course now involve the panel in understanding the increasing digital environments and their impact on the workforce. And before we go into all the questions that we've prepared for you and the topics, we'd of course like to have everyone introduce themselves. And I think we'll begin with Taffy as you're first on my screen.
Thank you, Moretn, and good morning, everybody. I'm Taffy Gatawa. I am Chief Information and Compliance Officer at EveryLife Technologies. EveryLife Technologies provides a digital social care record known as PASS, which is used within the home care space and also within care homes. I'm really delighted to be here and to contribute to such an important week of recognizing professional care workers and the invaluable work that they do tirelessly, dedicated all the time. So real pleasure to be here.
Brilliant, Taffy. Thank you for that. Richard, you're next on my screen.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Richard. I work for another digital social care record called Log My Care. We work right across the full spectrum of social care, and yeah, really pleased to be here with you all today.
Thank you. Then Nick, on to you.
Hello, everyone. Delighted to be here too, and I hope I'll make a valuable contribution to today's conversation, which is very important, about digitalization. I'm Director of Operations at CareLineLive, and we are a software platform that enables home care agencies to use digital tools to improve their efficiencies and capacity, and care workers absolutely, I think, benefit from that process.
We'll look forward to hearing more about that, Nick. And then on to you, Charles.
Hello, everyone. My name is Charles. Armitage. I'm the co-founder of a company called Florence, and we build technology to power the health and social care workforce. So what practically that means is we help care providers roster their permanent staff and fill their vacant shifts with either bank or temporary staffing. We help nurses and care workers learn and improve their professional development.
Brilliant, Charles. I think it's fair to say altogether then a lot of care professionals that I've met over the years do not join the care workforce to spend a lot of hours every day on filling out their paperwork. Hence, there's probably a very good business opportunity for most of these companies represented here today. But also, it's a question of how we see that digital transition really being an enabler for what care workers really then actually do join the sector to achieve. Anyone want to start with that one? How do you see digital as an enabler?
I'm happy to chime in there, Moretn. So I think it's a really important point that you raised, that actually people come to care because they want to care for people, they want to support people, they want to enable as best life and quality of life for people, more than the kind of the admin side of what that comes with. So I think really for digital to be that enabler, it needs to be seamless. And so often I think we have systems that try and lead care workers down a particular route, which perhaps doesn't always chime with the way people work. So I think for digital to be an enabler, we really need to get to a place where we understand the way in which care workers work. We understand and build systems that align with that way of working and that workflow, so that that part of the very important job that they do, because it's really important that we evidence the care, the quality, any concerns, so that those can be picked up and people can continue to have as best a quality of life as they can. But that part needs to be seamless, rather than that becomes the foregoing priority for care workers, such that they're taken away from the very essence of why they've come into the role. So for me, that's really important, how we make our systems more intuitive, more aligned with the way that people work, so that they almost are in the background, really, and the care can really take center stage.
I'm super curious, and I'd like to understand more. How do you then see a PaaS system and EveryLife? Is there anything particular in PaaS system and EveryLife that you guys do that you think creates this link between the purpose that you're describing and then the everyday work life? Is there anything particularly that you do that you think is worth emphasizing?
I'd say it's making the system intuitive. I would say ease of use is absolutely key, because we know that our care workers are under a lot of time pressure. They're time poor, they're busy. And so I think we go to great lengths to try and make our system easy to use, intuitive, so that we can almost anticipate how somebody might work. And we do that by involving our customers in our development. Absolutely key. So rather than us trying to preempt how care workers might undertake a particular care intervention, what we like to do is to really bring care workers, care providers in that journey of development. And so that's our way of really improving our product through that user-centric design, incorporating. So we do a lot of testing to just make sure that we are understanding the way in which people work if we're thinking of a new feature, and then try and make that as seamless and incorporating into those existing ways of working.
Yeah, Moretn, I'd like to just second all that in just a slightly different way, that there is a myth that a large part of the care workforce are maybe not digital natives, or find digital technology hard. But I actually don't believe that's the case if the digital tool providers like us do exactly what Taffy has said, which is make the product really intuitive to use and simple to use. And we've got lots and lots of examples now, don't we, of products that we use on our mobiles, and largely the care workforce will be interacting with digital tools through a mobile interface and through mobile apps. And I think that there are plenty now of examples of mobile apps being so simple and so intuitive and so easy to use that practically anyone, very young, from 6-year-olds to very old 80-year-olds, being able to pick up the tool really easily. So yes, I think it's absolutely for people like us who are trying to help care companies, and we use a tagline at CareLineLive, which is more time to care. The tools, I think what Taffy said earlier, should be something in the background. It's something that is not even thought of, and just essentially enables you to do your work quicker, easier, more productively, higher quality, all that.
Guys, Richard, is this something you can also recognize?
Yeah, definitely. Both of those statements chime with me massively. I think that any DSCR, digital social care record, should do the heavy lifting for the team, and should also push a kind of culture change from recording after the interaction to being as intuitive and easy to use on the go that you can record on the go as you're actually interacting. So as you say, having the right options there for carers to record what they're going to be performing accurately, that it's just that easy and seamless to tap through, or speak into your device and have all of your recording put down that way.
That sounds very right. Charles, you definitely also come across the pressure on you as a software provider, coming from what Nick is describing, what I would call the pressure from consumerization, that we each of us know our own cool apps. We know how to navigate Netflix and all that stuff. when people book rota shifts in Florence? How does that work? And does that support this tendency then?
Yeah, I think I echo the feelings of the other panelists actually, which is that there's this assumption that the social care workforce are sort of like anti-technology and anti-adoption, which is like completely not true. And you just said, you know, I know how to navigate Netflix or Facebook or Instagram or whatever. These are fairly ubiquitous tools across the world. Doesn't matter what role you're in. You tend to. My mum was doing her Instagram live the other day. I was like, what are you doing? And I think, you know, it's incumbent then on software companies to make sure that what they're building uses modern user experience and modern user interface to make sure that's really easy. But easy for people to use. It can be easier said than done though, and I think you know, the reason people all find Instagram easy to use, the reason people find Netflix easy to use, is because they invest millions and millions of pounds in user experience research and design. And I think we need to have that same attitude if we're building stuff for people on the front line. We need to be putting stuff in the hands of users, understanding how they're interacting with it and building it with them in mind, rather than just blasting some code onto a page and seeing what comes out the other end.
That's so true. I know that Netflix carries out more than 120 A/B tests on show cards alone. So if you're watching any show on Netflix, you'll be watching according to your previous likes, dislikes, search history, and so on. And the show card that you get is the show card that's just right for you. They obviously invest quite a lot of money in that. But now you've all had a chance to say how great you are. Then I was going to come to, but I'll let you in there, Charles.
I was saying I still can't find anything to watch on Netflix, but that's maybe my problem.
Yeah, analysis paralysis, perhaps.
Yeah.
Well, you've had a chance to say how you really enable care workers out there, and I've put on my T-shirt also today to say that we need to continuously choose our carers, and we do that, as you said, Taffy, all the way down to the individual feature. Is this something that's stressful, or is it something that's meaningful? Is it something that's really backing up the actual work mode? Now, I've previously been made aware of software packages within our industry that penalize care professionals for not being on time, performing the correct task. What's your take on this?
Moretn, when you sent us some preliminary sort of ideas about what we may discuss today as a panel, and I read that question, I really fell off my chair, because I haven't come across any tools, any products that really do that. And I would have thought that anything that does that would be not adopted. Adoption by your workforce of your tools is a key criteria of whether or not it's going to be successful in the business. So my thoughts on this were that, of course, that is wrong. Products or digital tools should be, as we said earlier, be helping the workforce and the business to do their work and not hindering them. I'm quite aghast that if there are any tools that do this.
I guess for me, it's rather than approaching it from a point of view of penalizing, which suggests to me a lack of trust, perhaps, of the workforce. For me, it's more about understanding what is the challenge in front of us that we're trying to solve, as opposed to perhaps implementing something that then is perceived as, you know, penalizing in some way. And an example that comes to me is the requirement, I guess, to record time and attendance, if we think about care in the community, for example. Now, we know that that's driven by existing contractual arrangements that exist from local authorities, you know, because of funding, etc. And these are things that we can't get away from. So I think approaching it from the perspective of, okay, well, there is a need to be able to record and report on this, but how do we do it in such a way that it becomes supportive of the care worker? So rather than just perhaps an arbitrary alert that goes because it's a particular time and we haven't had a particular notification of a check-in, etc., whatever that may be, why not approach it as, let's have this being a two-way communication. So a tool that enables that. So the care worker can say, actually, traffic is really bad today, so I'm actually going to be 10 minutes late. So even if that alert can't be then overridden in some way, when it's triggered, there is an understanding already in the system of what's going on. And actually it becomes more helpful to the care worker. So it takes away the stress element because they have a legitimate reason as to why they're not in a place at a particular time, but they're able to communicate that. So that becomes more of a positive as opposed to, you know, I'm stuck in traffic, I've probably been delayed in my last call, so I stayed because it was the right thing to do rather than leave to chase a time to avoid this alert. But actually it becomes more of an enabling tool that allows that communication in real time, because we know that care is dynamic. You know, it's not neat on a page as we might want it to be, that you move from A to B to C, and when, you know, the things you expect to do when you're there is exactly how it plays out, you know, as people, our needs can change from day to day. So I think we need systems that understand the problem and address the problem in a way that is supportive rather than a penalizing way of addressing the problem. So that would be my take on that.
I like that take. It definitely talks into a shift of mentality coming from a very time and task regime over into something that could remind me, when you speak at least now, of a more Dutch model, a Buurtzorg model, where your calls, your visits are aiming at seeing the whole individual and not just what I need to take off now. And if I don't do it on the right time, I'm being penalized.
Absolutely.
All right, that was me finding an appalling thing, at least I find it, in the sector. Any of you got any examples that you'd like to say? I've seen this, I've heard of this. Is there anything that you think of? We aren't only good, I suppose, us that provide software for the sector. Have we seen anything out there that we want to address now?
For me, I think there's something about how do we make this a more equitable kind of access to digital, and that's a big question, and perhaps one that this panel cannot arrive at an answer to. But for me, that's a real challenge that I think as a collective across the sector, we really need to look at this, because, you know, the direction of travel is that this is not going to let up. You know, we've got a government scheme at the moment, government program that is pushing towards more digitization across the sector with a bit of funding behind it. So this is happening. We know we've got a workforce where the access is variable because of a range of things. Some of that is infrastructure. You know, we know in some rural areas, just connectivity in itself is a challenge. But then there is the challenge also of just actually getting devices, etc. And how do we address this so that we don't end up with a society where that becomes almost a lottery, really, in terms of where you are and how good the quality of care you can provide, because you haven't got all of the necessary tools. We started talking about enablers, and this is key. And of course, we know that whilst we're very much thinking about the care workforce, we know that the experience of the workforce has a direct impact on the experience of those being cared for. So I think it's really important that we continue to surface this and collectively think about how we address this real challenge in front of us.
Good point, good point.
It's on a slightly different tack, Moretn, but if I can jump in. So I think one of the other things that you potentially see sometimes is, across the sector is a lack of desire for integration, interoperability between different platforms, and ultimately, you know, as a user of technology, whether it's you're a carer or a home manager or whatever your role, you're the one that suffers when software providers aren't collaborative and supportive of each other. And some people do it really, really well, and they go out of their way to make sure that the user experience out with just their own product stack is really, really good. But sometimes you can see incumbents take positions where they almost see like a monopoly. They have like a monopolized position within the market, whatever that market is, and they see integrations and interoperability between different products as a potential risk to their defensibility. And I think organizations like that might short term have gain a competitive advantage, but I think long term, if you're not thinking about what the user needs, you're always going to lose.
I really like that point, and I think what's going on right now within, of course, our particular space in digital social care records is, of course, the NHS Transformation Directorate Program, where there's a dynamic purchasing system that software providers like yourselves can get onto and get approved. And that in itself enables a whole stack of possibilities with the NHS Spine, integrations to GP Connect, shared care records and all that stuff. So definitely that could be part of improving the experience for the individual care worker as a user of these type of systems. Then how would you, having said what we've said so far, how would you rank the current digital social care environment if we were to say on a scale 1 to 10? And how and why would you rank them wherever you rank them? Richard, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, I'd go with a 7 at the moment. I think it's, a positive time, really exciting time. As you say, we're on the cusp of this big push for services to digitize. And I think the services themselves and care workers should be really excited about that and what that's going to bring to their role, and how, as we've already said, that's going to actually enable them to spend more time doing exactly what they enjoy doing rather than the admin side of things. So I think a 7, because we're on the cusp of that, and there's some challenges. There's going to be teething issues, as with anything. We're all aware of that. But overall, it's super positive. It's just about picking, what's right for your service, what's going to suit you and your team, and what support and care you actually provide. So yeah, that's what I go with at the moment.
Good. Anyone disagreeing with the 7?
I would be. Sorry, Charles, you go.
You crack on.
I was just going to say that I'd be a tiny bit more critical of all of us right now. I would maybe mark us at a 5 or a 6, but not because each individual solution is a 5 or a 6. But I think the crux of the problem is what Charles referred to in the earlier question, which is about data flows and information flows and interoperability between systems. And although Moretn, you've referred to the NHSX people making, I think, a big push towards trying to have interoperability between primary and social and secondary care records and the rest of us. One of the inherent problems is, so let me just put a scenario forward which creates an issue, which is suppose and let's just take home care, which I'm more familiar with, a service user that is receiving care may have one provider giving care, and then as a result of some changes, a different provider comes in. Both the providers may more than likely will use a different digital social care record system, and actually exchanging the information flow between the two, even if both systems are committed to enabling information flow, is going to be difficult, because the data points can be quite different between the two systems. Their designs are different. They've decided to major on different records to digitize. So that in itself is an issue. And of course, in the service, for the service user, a complete history of the information available to the right people at the right time would be obviously the right thing for us. But we're quite a long way away from that scenario becoming enabled. The other thing, obviously, is that we are dealing with individuals and personal information, and there is a lot of challenges or issues for us to think about protecting personal information and data. So that's another thing. So with health and social care, I feel that there is a particular environment which means that this nirvana that we would want to happen or to come about with complete transparency, or if I can put it, the goal should be that the right information is available at the right time for the right person anytime. I mean, that's what we're trying to get at. That will give perfect scenarios of care being given, and that we're quite a long way away from achieving that, I think.
But Nick, I would say therein lies the opportunity. And so for me, I think it's a really exciting time that we're in, because, you know, we're at a place where we're now talking about standards, for example, you know, standards about how we collect information, standards about how we exchange that information between systems. And we've now got a system in terms of the care system. If we think about the Department of Health, etc., that system, that's what I mean. We've now got a system that's actually now starting to align to say, this is what we should be doing, and here are some of the ways in which we can do it. Let's have standards. You know, we've been talking about the work that the PRSB has been doing around standards like for, you know, digital social care, personalization of care planning, for example, the About Me standards. So regardless of the system, if we are working to those standards, then it means my system and your system should be able to talk to each other. You know, we should be able to exchange that information seamlessly. You know, we've got a framework around information governance. We've got legislation that supports the sharing of that information. So for me, it's an exciting time. And I wouldn't necessarily seek to assign a number like others have done, but for me, it's looking at all of those opportunities that I think are there for us to really embrace, to really move the sector forward. So I see it as exciting, you know, all of these things. I think now is a really great time to be working in this space to really make a change, something impactful, I feel.
I definitely agree from a software provider's perspective. But if you were looking at it from the individual care workers, care professionals perspective, are we then on Richard's 7 or are we on Nick's 5?
I would say, if as software providers, we do the thing that we're talking about, so we do the standards, you know, we are collecting information in, you know, in structured ways, that means we can exchange that information. For me, that translates for the care worker to something more seamless. You know, they can get the information they need. We've got the integration. I mean, Charles's point, which we haven't really talked a lot about, is a really good point, because what we don't want to do is to create more stress for the system and for the care worker by having 10 different things that they have to log into to get a clear picture of what's happening for somebody. We need to integrate where that is appropriate, so that for the care worker, their key source of information, that digital social care record, be it plugged into EMA, compliance, whatever is the thing, they can get that information. So for me, I think if we do it right as software suppliers, it translates to a better experience for our care workforce and ultimately for the people receiving care.
I absolutely share that. Now, you already mentioned things that we can do and things, we talked a bit about things we should stop doing. I'm back to my observations now, of course, but one of them over the last couple of years, another one has got to do with systems and alerts, and walking through the halls of a beautiful care home. I sometimes feel that it's a very stressful environment still. Are there too many alerts, noisy notifications from a wide systems landscape? Also, perhaps because of what we've just talked about, notifications being from separate systems, separate logins, and so on. Is there simply too much noise in the care environments? Is that a stressful or is that a meaningful environment for the individual care worker? Who dares?
I'd like to have a go at sort of trying to tackle this topic. So I think with digitalization, it goes hand in hand that the noise that you're talking about will take place, i.e. a complete alerts and notifications are part and parcel of digital information being collected and being acted on. But I think we have a good example from our mobile operating systems that allow users to very quickly, easily configure the frequency and availability of the relevant alerts and notifications that they care about. So unlike most people probably in the UK, I'm an Android user, and actually Google you know, has a fantastic way for you to basically decide whether an alert is important to you or not, and whether you should keep receiving it. And so I think that the task of our tools is to enable that configurability really easily. I think that the alerts should be raised, because sometimes one alert is very important. It's no longer noise, and the user needs to be able to configure which ones that they want to be alerted by and act on.
Thank you. I think it's a really good example of where we have, as software providers, the ability to, and also the power to choose our carers or choose something else. And I'm happy with your answer to say that this should be configurable on a user level, to say, is this something where I need the bells to go off, or is this something actually where I'm okay with a smooth notification? As I'm not an Android user, but an Apple, I get a small red notification on whatever app that's notifying me of whatever it is. Anybody else for alerts and notifications?
Yeah, I'd agree.
Go on, Richard.
I'd agree with Nick on that. Definitely the ability to customize what notifications are going to be seen immediately and what are going to pop up, say, in product, is really important. Twofold, obviously, for the mental health impact of, you know, not being able to switch off as you're getting these notifications coming in, if they're not, you know, customized or configured correctly. And then there's also the risk of the, you know, important notifications being missed amongst the others there as well. So yeah, definitely, I think that configuration, both from a service level and then from the individual level, is really important.
Charles, this was obviously very much from or a lot of this has been from a digital social care records perspective. Is there anything in your system in Florence that you think is working towards choosing our carers when it comes to this alerts, notifications, heaven or hell that I'm talking about?
I mean, I think it's a pretty delicate balance, isn't it? And yeah, we spent a lot of time thinking about it. What the optimum number of pushes and notifications you want to be giving people every day. What our kind of like interesting findings are is it's not one size fits all, so there isn't like a magic number. Some people have very, very low tolerance for notifications. Some people actually have extremely high tolerance for notifications, and so totally, I think that, again, just be user centric. I think the best approach is to try and ensure that you as a user of software can define what you want to be told about and when you want to be told about it. I think that's the only approach you can take.
Makes good sense. Are there any other places within your systems where you can say, we've now taken the red route or the blue route in terms of creating a more desirable working environment for the individual care worker? Is there any way where you've said, okay, now sprint points, we're going for the more expensive one because we're choosing our carers here? Or is that not really a thing when you're planning your developments?
It's always the thing, I think. Has to always be the thing. But I guess, I don't know who you would be building something for otherwise if it isn't for the people using your technology. So it has to be for the people who are using it.
Yeah. You second that? Everyone?
Yeah, I absolutely. I mean, I don't, my personal experience is not that wonderful about alerts and notifications in our product development cycle. So I'm not going to comment too much about specifics about us having made decisions on which alerts absolutely perhaps we push out and make less configurable or not. But I think the general principle of I think two design principles: alerts should be relevant information that could be useful, and secondly, configurable in sort of whether or not someone wants to receive it in what format. If we allow both those principles to be enacted, then I think they will be useful and not become noise.
Super.
I would just add a final point there, which is, I think, you know, the whole going digital, it's a journey. And, you know, the experience when I speak to our customers, particularly people who are embarking on that journey at the beginning, there is sometimes that sense of overwhelming, oh my gosh, suddenly we're being told about all this information of what's going on across, you know, our service. And that can feel overwhelming and can sound like noise. But over time, as part of that change management process, it's the provider gets to decide what are the things that they want to know about and what are the things that we can now start to call noise and actually they don't need to be alerted on. And I think somebody made the point that actually, and that varies from provider to provider. So I think it's allowing that process of change and understanding, okay, well, this is key. We need to know that. And maybe we need to know this all the time, or at different points in time, that's different. So we may be interested in this at particular checkpoints or touch points, depending on, you know, the type of service. And it's enabling that, but ultimately giving that control back to the care provider to make that choice, as opposed to preempting what that is. And then, you know, surfacing perhaps information that's not necessarily helpful at the expense of what might be helpful. Because I think the whole, you know, the whole coming back to the point of being enabler, really all of these digital tools should be almost like an assistant to the care workers, the care provider, so that rather than leafing through pages to find that thing that they need to act on, we present it, and then it's for them to take the decision. Actually, no, I think, you know, I understand the picture well enough to know that I don't need to act. And actually, yes, I need to jump on that. So it becomes that assistant for them so that they're not doing the leafing through the pages, as it were. And we're presenting that information for them to take a decision on what to act on and what doesn't need that action.
That makes great sense. And I think it fits really well in with a discussion, another potential discussion, which has to do with from a product roadmap development perspective, especially when looking at some generation 1 systems within social care, where I could say from a very layman's perspective, they're very admin centric, and are perhaps not very user friendly or person centered in their essence. Is this something that you also discuss in your development meetings, and a thing that you feel like if we can get to the point of not being admin centric but serving admin really well, and perhaps in a more slick way than previously, but then focus on our end user, the perhaps 80%, 85%, at least for a care planning system, that are the people that actually evidence the care?
I think a good system is one that evolves. The point was made earlier about investment. So, you know, what might have been great 4 years ago when we all celebrated the particular release needs to move and shift over time. And, you know, in much the same way that we are saying, you know, care is ever evolving, it's dynamic, and our systems need to evolve with that. And so we need to constantly be looking at how can we optimize the system, the workflow, whatever that is, in light of the way that people are working, in light of the pressures that we know people are experiencing, how can we continually make that system better? And certainly that is our ethos, which is an ethos of continual improvement, very much based on feedback from users. So I would say that for me is how we address that challenge.
Anybody else? Charles, I'm going to come to you again because I know that this was again another question on care planning or digital social care records. But looking at Florence at a glance from the outside, I was thinking that you guys really have done or have the potential of a more democratic way of booking your shifts, swapping, all of that stuff. How do you see that again from an admin versus user-centric perspective?
As in, like, what are the trade-offs in that kind of way of working?
Yeah, or do you feel that you're playing the power back into the hands of those that man the shifts, or is it really still someone who's only one person who's then in charge of shift planning? Or
yeah, I think look, I think one of the biggest trends in the care sector is what we have, the challenges we have around recruitment and retention, and expectations from the workforce have changed. We're like record low unemployment, and not just within care but across the world. People's expectations around flexibility, autonomy, being able to have a work life that fits around their personal life, those trends have really accelerated recently, and sometimes that can be a challenge for people that manage services, and it can make their lives more difficult when they're having to juggle all these things. I guess we want to create a solution in the future where we can do everything we can to support care providers in helping them recruit and retain staff. And I think one of the cool things about that is being able to do what you can to support your workforce to work in the way they want to do it. And flexibility isn't the whole piece. There's a lot about pay, there's a lot about professional development, and there's a lot about training and belonging and all these other things that are really important to help recruit and retain a workforce. But first step, if you can move away from rigidity around things like rota planning and put power back in the hands of people that are actually doing the work, I think that's really helpful.
Wonderful response to that. Thank you. Then also looking ahead, what are the thing, or maybe the one thing that you're really expecting a lot of when it comes back to improving the working environments and the well-being of the people, all the many users of your products out there? Is there anything out there that you've got lurking that you're thinking, I'm expecting a lot of this?
I think more client or service user involvement in products as well would be awesome, to have client feedback available directly for the social care workforce, so they can see exactly the impact they're having on someone's life, what that visit today meant to that person. Just having that constant positive reinforcement and feedback from someone that you're working closely with every day, I think would be a massive thing. And it's one thing that I'm really passionate about for Log My Care in the future.
I can definitely second that. I think that would be super cool if you had that as a feature in Log My Care, to say upon a visit or a care interaction of some sort, that you get the immediate response. You don't get that in a paperwork, do you? You perhaps get it immediately off the other person, of course. That was a nice thing. Thank you for helping me, or whatever it was. But if you can collect that as a data also, then you can really act on it, can't you, for outcomes and everything?
Yeah, exactly.
And in terms of innovation, I guess what all of us have to strive for, especially in the Western developed countries and definitely in the UK, we all know that the aging population is becoming a greater proportion of the population, and therefore the pressure on aged care and illness care is going to be greater and greater, and we know that the public finances are very stretched, and the goal is to keep people healthier, and even when they're not healthy, perhaps care takes place not in hospitals. And also, I guess, residential care is becoming more and more expensive for reasons of workforce unavailability, all that. So in terms of innovation, this sort of idea of getting the holistic picture of the service user is where we're all, I think, trying to head towards. But the challenge there is very much that all the signals that you get, whether they're from physical devices, whether they're from care records and care planning records, etc., that they all allow alerts or insights that mean that relevant interventions take place at the right time. So in terms of innovation, I guess what I'm trying to say is that for me, the big, again, I'll use the word nirvana, is about systems coming together, the information changing all the time to the right people at the right time, available at the right time, that allows us to be healthier, and not need medical intervention, especially in secondary care where, our capacity is low. Once you enter hospitals, you have other issues that come about, all that.
One of the things that really gets my attention these days is the quite extensive talk about AI, and the link where I find AI to be interesting, at least for a lot of the types of software that I know a lot of providers already have in place or will be looking to get in place, has to do with, again, with the care worker and informed decision making. I think sometimes it's my experience that care professionals of all sorts will find that because of lack of time, because of a stressful working environment perhaps already, then it's a tough call on a lot of the things you need to do throughout your workday. And am I doing this the right way? Do I have enough guidance as I do it? And so on and so forth. Do you see that AI can play any role in supporting decision making, for instance?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think that it's been shown in other sectors where AI, AI, to me, at least one part of AI, and I think the first part of AI that will come through in our sector will be sort of insights and information coming from machine learning. And machine learning tools is all about pattern recognition. And I think what you say, that care working, either in a residential care home setting or in a home care setting, it's about pressures and stresses, and care workers don't have time necessarily. They're always under pressure to go on to the next thing, or either the next task or to the next patient. And I think AI can certainly be handy if they've just made an observation, let's say a blood pressure reading or a sugar reading, and that information is then used by the software to raise some sort of alert, say, hang on, today actually there's a significant difference in the trend. Can you do one more check, or can you raise a concern? Or so I absolutely feel that software and AI tools can only help, because they will help us decide faster, see information in a different light, all that.
Obviously, it's going to be down to the quality of the actual natural language processing and the AI, and how much it knows about the individual and the data patterns and so on and so forth. Then, not talking about innovation as in product, but talking about, it was the very clever CEO of the Home Care Association, Jane Townsend, that told me, and perhaps, and I hope a lot of others, that it's not down to the product end of day, which products are going to be bought in 10 years' time within social care. It's down to the service. Are there any things that you're doing or that you're expecting to do, or that you see others do, that you find relevant, again, towards the goal of increasing the workforce well-being when it comes to digital?
Yeah, I think removing stress from care workers' days is something that we should all be working towards. And Taffy gave good examples earlier of how digital can help relieve stress out. We at CareLineLive have toyed around the idea of enabling care workers to just indicate very quickly at the end of a day about how they're feeling at the, and is it a happy face, a frowning face, or a plain face, and just I think tools like that will mean that people around the care workers understand what they're feeling and going through, and then be able to give support. So I think our sort of tools certainly should and can help the welfare of care workers, reduce the stresses and give them, certainly take the admin away as well, take the unnecessary time away so that they can spend more time caring. I absolutely feel we can do more there.
Thank you for that, Nick. Taffy, coming to you, I think you mentioned, which I at least translated into, the implementation service that you wrap your product with when describing the perhaps the reluctance or the fears of going digital and all of that stuff. Do you think that implementation is overseen in the sector now?
Sorry, do I think that implementation is
overlooked? Is it something that we invest enough focus and time on?
I think if I speak, I can only speak from an EveryLife perspective, from a past perspective, and we see that as absolutely crucial to the success of adoption. So we spent a lot of time working with customers to just understand their state of readiness, understanding what are they trying to achieve, what's the outcome that they're hoping for, understand the problems that they're hoping this will solve for them, and then really that engagement piece, making sure that they are fully brought in, not just the decision makers or but the whole workforce is fully brought in and understand the benefits that they can expect to derive from the digital change. I think that implementation is really important. And I think sometimes, yes, it is overlooked. If I think across the sector, people get excited about, the thing and actually forget all the prep work that needs to happen to actually then get the benefit that you're hoping for from implementing going digital. So there's some fantastic pieces of work that have been done by different organizations, King's Fund. In my capacity as Casper, we've also done some work just around educating on going digital and what are the key considerations beyond just selecting, getting to that point of choosing. And certainly implementation, I see that as really important because I think that can make or break the experience. And of course, what we know is that if people have had a previous bad experience of trying to introduce technology in a service, then they sort of feel, we're not going there again. And actually, that is not what we're pushing for as a sector. So we need to make sure that that experience is informed, it's supported, and we understand from the outset the goals that a service is trying to achieve when they embark on that digital journey.
I'm sure Jane Townsend would be nodding her head when listening to that, because I equally do believe it's super important. We're coming to an end, so just wary of time and of course also of questions in the Q&A. And there is one now from Simon Bottery. And Nick, I can see that you've already started answering that. Perhaps you can take that live, and then the question goes, how does LA commissioning practice need to change to increase the potential for care technology? And Nick, since you've already started answering, can you please take it?
Well, yeah, so my experience is that, and I think this goes back to local authorities having deployed solutions for themselves in their commissioning of care requirements and services, deployed solutions maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, made decisions. And I think one of the things that CareLineLive finds frustrating is that there are still many local authorities that enforce a particular solution to be used by care providers so that they can interface with the local authority more easily and quickly. I think that things are changing, and I think most local authorities are beginning to understand that they need to ask service providers to use tools that can push the right information into the local authority systems, so that the local authorities can have safeguarding and finance requirements, etc., be streamlined for themselves. But one of the things that local authorities absolutely need to do is to be much more supportive to both their care providers as well as technology solution providers to be able to interface with their systems and not enforce a particular route. That's my only sort of experience level right now about how LAs could help the adoption of more tools within service providers.
Taffy, Richard, anything to add?
Yeah, I just agree again. It's important to have that openness to work across different platforms. I think we were talking about it earlier and how beneficial that is, rather than being, closed off, and having the ability to integrate with one another and with local authorities. So there's more options and more choice for the services themselves, and that's only going to be a benefit to teams and service users, that they actually get what's the best fit for them, rather than what's hoisted upon them by the fact that this is what we work with, this is what we use.
Great. Then I'd like to thank all of you for coming and from a software provider's perspective, explaining to all of us, giving us at least a better understanding of how you in your everyday life help increase the workplace or workforce well-being, and of course to create good, sound digital environments within our sector. So thank you for that. And then remember, going forward, to choose our carers when we're sitting with the feature developments and nudging them. Please do so. Thank you all for joining us also today, and have a good rest of your day and rest of Professional Care Workers Week.
Excellent.
Thank you, Moretn.
Very much.
Thanks a lot.